these collars to date actually the brown one, most likely because what I explained about the collar being, very striped, but almost having a tweedy look to it, and the height of it is quite a bit high, even for very informal collar like that, not being very much cut away like it was the fashion, being very shiny, being made out of linen, everything put into considerations. Also having no branding marks, which was not something they did usually for collars. But it has a branding mark because the sell-out is actually harder and more expensive to do. So they would have all the branding marks there. It was so pointless to put them there. It was extra step that would sooner or later, as one has seen with that example, with the laundry. It was not a branding stamp, it was a thick laundry stamp, and it just, after 2 startings, it is virtually completely gone. So this is most likely dates are now done. He said 1940s. No. This is not 1940s. This is way back. Because now I have observed it in my hands and touched it and all. This is the original starch from the factory. Nobody would have starched an informal collar like that thickly. That heavily, supremely starched in 1940s. A collar of that style in the 1940s would likely have had a much longer leaf, much narrower band, especially be soft with thinner starch neck with fusing, so that it can't even take long starch. And even if it had no fusing, it would not be that heavily starched in the factory. It might even be sold as unstarched and with the option to starch it. Even if one would manage to starch it as much as that was rare, because usually these were thicker linen, even if winter wear linen, and usually they were cotton when they were of that informal style. So this points out to a decade when really detachable collars were the epitome. Like everybody had a detachable collar. They had the most formal, super high ones back then, which are 13 inches. Very extreme feathers. They were in pearl collars that lapped over and white. And then for the very informal styles, they always wanted detachable collars and always stiff. Even when they were cloth and not celluloid, which also can only be stiff. And only still wanted them very stiff. So I would go with 1910 when collars were the stiffest, 1910 to 1970. So I would go with late 1908, where by the stiffest, I mean, they had super stiff collars, as I said, beginning in 1885, or even a teeny bit before for their avant-garde style. It might have begun in 1880, perhaps even one may push it to 78. But that it is so popular that to do it on collars that they just sell it like that, they started before selling it that heavily. Purposely made that it would last less long and be more expensive initially, but could be as supremely starched, in other words, thin linen, even for a very informal collar like so. And the probability that it survived into truly, obviously, the newer it is, the less early, the higher the probability of it surviving. But one should remember also that it means there were more of such collars. That would have been supremely rare for the 1880s or 90s. Already back in the era, it would have been at least very rare. So what is the probability of it surviving today when even the common ones, white ones like that, most of them have not survived. So in all likelihood, it dates from a decade when they were the most popular, the highest percent that have been made ever in history. Also, there were more people back then and more mass production. In the 1910s, one almost entered into the third and last stage of the mass production. In other words, the supremely, completely absurd, huge amount of mass production that we still now live in. Although it got exaggerated in the 70s and further. But whereas before, they were in the second phase, which was already very massive. The first phase, starting in 1780 and 70, was a very small mass production and entered into a big one that we recognize as a mass production into the late 40s, 1850s. Anyhow, this is most likely from 1905-8 to 1900 and just before the end of World War I, 17, 15. Actually, by 15, collars had begun ever so slightly depredating down, at least in the US. Perhaps in Britain one had to wait to 1917 for perhaps Britain and France. And by 1980, 1920, they were way less popular. They were still very popular, and it was not like in the feathers, but way less. So this is once I would get that one. This one may be a tad more recent, or It's funny because the marking, the stamp, is stamped exactly in the same place and exactly the same font, although it can almost not be seen there. Just look at the Instagram photograph and that. So I guess because it is too much of a coincidence to say, but all the British stamps in their life, and also the tongue is cut upon the exact same pattern. So I guess this is probably even from the same year, or at least the same decade, or at least very least from the same company, that is for sure. Was it the same year? It's hard to tell. So these are very old colours, they're probably above 100 years. Because this would be more, you know, in the 80, 90 years range. And this, again, a bit more recent, perhaps, see, not the same pattern of tongue, also there's a cellular column. Now, this would be, yeah, it could be 1910s also, this is very likely 1910s, because then these became unpopular. After 1920, those people stopped wearing cellular collars. And in some were still wearing them, but in Britain they were never that popular, I think. They were, I mean, but not after the war, I suppose. I'm not so sure. This could be 20s. I said up to 1940 this is very unlikely. I guess this is more 1920s or 10s, and this is just before 1910 to 1950, 1980, you know. And this is probably the same brand. It comes all stocks that had not been sold from that shop. I have received them from a certain company, or that is unknown now. If anybody knows help, it is more than welcome. Obviously, I would wear these. If I'm not rare to the point that I shall not wear them. This is very rare. This has been very rare. Find these nowadays. If it is from the 1910s, it would not have been that rare back then. It would not have been the most common, but barely have been rare. Again, they could be from especially the first half of the 20s. It is simply less likely. At least the leaf, the band would likely be thinner in a nowler like here, and have a longer leaf, if anything, or at least the bend is thinner, at least one of those, you know. Usually the bend, actually, a nowler bend. At least more like that one. Well, no, actually, the other one is. They kind of look exactly the same. For some reason, I thought that was in a rounded color, but it's not. That one is a bit less long. A teeny bit less long. It looks a bit less long because there's more extension of the leaf. No, there's less. That is what they look like. Very informal, sort of squarish Aberdeen collars almost. Very much 1910s looking, late 1910s, you know, very late 1990s. Not 1990s, I mean 90s, you know, before 1910. It was before, you know, they were more like that, even when informal. They usually had a higher bend and thus also leaf, but the leaf extended less past beyond the bend, and also it had less of a cutaway. These French collars, especially due to the box, they're most likely all there, more like before 1910. Perhaps even dating back to 1890. It's very improbable before 1890. I'll explain why. Especially if it's heavily starched for French one. This is a perfect reproduction. It had collars like that starting in 1855. Well, no, it's only 62. It had the same, yeah, exactly the same by the same company. This is just a perfect reproduction they make, like a high-grade, medium-grade reproduction whereby the fabric used, even the cardboard inside it is exactly the same. I think they use the original cardboard and even the original pieces of linen, so this is the highest grade reproduction, practically like an original on the construction was made today with the same original machines. Again, linen cardboard with linen. So, and I have more colors to examine. More recent ones. As I said, these were 1940s soft colors. I hope to start in heavily. As I said, that could be done. Before I want to open up these little colors. These are starch colors, older colors, to wear with the, you know, my French peasant shirts. Because they're so long, I still wear them as undergarments because I wear them in the summer when it's too broad and warm. So I try to just wash the tails, but still there's a lot of work. Washing the wool shirt, I have to do it by hand because they're so fragile. And so I try to do it after a month of wear, because they're not white, they're actually crude. But the color gets so disgusting after 2 weeks. So I transform, I showed it yesterday. Most of them have a stand-up collar, so I made the option with a star in the front, and I saw the button that was in the front and the back, so that it can actually take a removable collar. And thus I bought these white ones, because the striped ones go with the striped shirts I have from the